Some stories are too ordinary to notice until they lean close and breathe into your ear. What if the bed you sleep in remembers people better than their families do? And what if the mirror above the sink refuses to show the person standing behind you? Welcome back to Whispering Abyss. Tonight, we are checking into places that should be forgettable and cheap, but instead keep a ledger of the living. From ice machines humming like voices to key cards that unlock doors in the wrong century. Every story is a mystery waiting to unfold. Which story creeped you out the most? Tell us in the comments, so I know which room to avoid. Story 1. Room 17 never checks out. I checked into my job the way you check into a cheap room, quietly, tired, promising yourself it is only for one night, right until something scratches your name off the ledger and keeps the key. Isn't that how it goes? The motel sat off Route 41, its neon vacancy sign stuttering in the cold like a failing breath. When the V died, it read vacancy, and the buzz in my teeth felt like a warning too small to earn a raise, but big enough to make me swallow twice. I was the night auditor. New. Probationary. If I kept the books clean and the lobby cleaner, the manager said I might go full-time in 2 weeks. I told my sister I would call her by dawn to prove I could hold a normal schedule. She laughed and said, "We will see Eli, won't we?" The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner, and something metallic the lemon could not bully. The clock over the desk ticked softly, but the minute hand was shy by a notch, like it did not want to touch the next number. A laminated checklist told me when to run the audit and how to ignore the rest. And then there was the ledger, an old paper book for the owner's tradition, even though the system was digital. Page 17 was worn where none of the others were. I thumbed past it on purpose, like you step around a puddle that might be deeper than it looks. By midnight, I had 3 truckers, 2 couples who fought with whispers, and 1 man who asked for room 17 and flinched when I said it was out of order. He took room 9 and stared across the lot at 17, like he was watching someone stand too close to a cliff. The bleach and pennies smell was strongest on that end, as if the housekeeper had poured mops into the hallway instead of water. Maybe there had been a leak, I thought, and maybe that was not my problem, and maybe... At 12:40 a.m., the ice machine started talking. You know the sound. A churning hum that hiccups when cubes drop. Only this one had rhythm. A low number drone. 1, 2, 3. Then a murmur, then 4, 5. Then a whispering pause that made me look at the clock. The clock that was now 1 minute behind where my phone said it should be. I tapped the glass. The minute hand flirted with the next line and decided against it. I smiled at myself in the lobby glass like I could push the night with teeth. My checklist said to balance authorizations at 3 o'clock, but a separate sheet was clipped to the ledger with a red paper clip. Manual verify room 17 at 3:17 a.m. forced hold. I laughed. Someone had a sense of humor. The room was out of service. There was no charge to verify. I reached for the red clip and smelled coins again. Hot coins, like a fist had gripped them too long. The man in 9 came to the window. He did not ring the bell. He just breathed. "You ever see a kid?" he asked, looking past me at the keyboard where a brass fob marked 17 hung heavier than the plastic card around it. "You ever see the door open by itself?" I said I had not. He smiled like he believed me and did not believe anyone at all. "I saw it once," he said, and turned back toward his room before I could ask when. The ice machine hummed 6, 7, 8, then fell into a throaty error like it swallowed a word it might regret. You will roll your eyes when I tell you the maintenance man's name was Ralph, and that he wore a jumpsuit with a stitch patch. He knocked at 2:50 a.m., asked for the plunger, signed a work order with a blunt pencil, and shuffled down the corridor toward 17. I watched him go and thought of how ordinary danger begins. It begins with paperwork. It begins with a patch that says Ralph when the man never looks up to prove it. At 2:59, I nudged the clock's minute hand with a fingertip. It resisted, then slid forward like a stuck drawer. It read exactly 3 o'clock, and my phone agreed, which felt like victory until the neon sign outside lost the V again. Vacancy, then vacancy, then a strobe that made my reflection skip frames in the glass. The red clip glinted. My checklist stared. The room key waited. You will wonder why I did not call the manager. Because probation changes your spine. Because a single after-hours call would brand me fragile. Because I wanted to tell my sister at dawn that I had solved a stupid line item and that I was not the kind of man who let a number boss him. The ice machine counted 9, 10, 11, slow as a lullaby. The bleach and pennies smell crept over the counter and made my tongue taste old. I told myself I would only knock. I told myself I would not step inside. I told myself many things, and each one softened the next. I took the brass fob for 17, heavier than an honest key should be, and my fingers remembered the temperature of money. The corridor to 17 had wallpaper like clouded mirrors. My steps doubled and tripped in each panel, as if my legs wanted to walk past me. The door to 17 was not like the others. The wood had swollen some time ago and then shrunk, leaving a thin lip around the frame, a seam that could not stay warm. I pressed my ear to it and heard water in the walls. Not a leak, a breath, a long, thinning exhale that flattened when I leaned away. The minute hand on my phone said 3:13. The desk clock, which I had left corrected, would insist on 3:12, and the machine was rumbling 13 aloud, as if it wanted to be helpful. I knocked. The sound went nowhere. I knocked again, and the room breathed back through the seam and kissed the coins into my mouth. I could have left then. I know that. You know that. Every story stands on one rotten pier that a person decides to cross anyway. Mine was the ledger. The note said verify at 3:17 with a red clip. So I slid the key into the lock and put my palm on the door like I meant to apologize. Inside, the room was all the motel rooms you have ever slept in. Brown carpet, beige bedspread, a mirror above the sink that made the bottom half of your face look tired. The lamp by the bed had a chain that begged to be pulled. I did not pull it. The air was cold enough to spoil milk and wet enough to think about it. The bathroom door was ajar, and water made a patient tapping in the bowl, which was odd because the tap was off. I stepped 1 foot inside and felt the floor dip as if something had stood there all day, waiting to be relieved. The door drifted against my back with a courtly ease. I did not close it. The ice machine, which I could still hear through the duct, breathed 14. The clock on my phone showed 3:15. The mirror above the sink did not like me. I say that now and laugh, but in the moment it was true. It reflected me late. Page 17 in the ledger had been smudged. In the room, the smudge existed as an aura. Each corner breathed a little rust haze, a little lemon cleaner frost, like two smells fighting over a chair. On the bed lay a paper, triangle, housekeeping leaves when they fold a towel into a swan. Only there was no towel. The triangle had a date. 5 years ago yesterday. I glanced toward the bathroom, and the tapping became a count. 15, 16, a hell breath where 17 should have been. You expect something to jump. It did not. The door simply pressed harder. The chain on the lamp whispered. The neon outside buzzed, and the V died and flared. And in that dead gap, the hallway lights went polite and dim, which is a kind of courtesy horror loves. The choice came like a small coin in my pocket. Do I leave and lie on the report about a forced hole verification? Or do I finish the line item and be the man I pretended to be on the phone with my sister? I picked up the triangle. A rust smear bloomed against my palm like a slow blush. I put the triangle in my pocket and told myself I would keep it as proof. That was my first mistake that did not look like one. I touched the bathroom door and found it warmer than the room. I pushed, and the hinge groaned like a person privately. The mirror above the sink faced the other mirror across the room, and they met in an infinite hallway where I stood a millimeter off from myself. In that slender fault, I saw Ralph. He was behind me, in the reflection, holding the plunger like a staff, wearing the patch that said Ralph, and a look that wanted to be sorry. I turned. No one stood there. In the mirror, he took a step closer. The ice machine finally said 17, and then began again at 1, as if it had made a mistake. Work order, he said, but only in glass. The word fogged the mirror where it should not fog. I braced against the sink, and the tap coughed a thread of water that smelled like old nails. The desk clock lost a minute somewhere behind me. The neon outside snapped from vacancy to no vacancy in a single ugly blink. The door eased shut with a latch that sounded like a polite throat clearing. This is where I tell you the red herring felt true. A leak, a plumbing fault, an old motel with old bones, the maintenance man's reflection, the work order, the plunger. A mundane explanation standing still long enough to pet. I wanted it. I reached for it. I thought if I called out to Ralph, a living man would appear and scold me for being dramatic about smell and signage. I said his name to the mirror. The mirror smiled a second too late. The minute hand on my phone ticked to 3:17. The light by the bed did not turn on when I pulled the chain. The chain tugged back. The water stopped tapping. The silence that followed had weight, like a hand on my crown pressing me an inch shorter. Then the bathroom fan wheezed to life and exhaled dust with the same bleach and penny smell that had been teased down the corridor all night. I made the second choice then. It is not the brave one. It is simply the one I made. I put my phone on the sink so I could use both hands, and I stepped fully into the room. The door clicked. The knob did not turn when I tried it. The polite kind of stuck that can be solved with patience. And when I glanced back to the mirror for advice, the me in it nodded, as if to say, "You picked, now stand in it." The counting started again, but faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. It came through the vent like breath with arithmetic. The floor felt slightly softer, not sinking, more like remembering. I lifted the bedspread. Dust moved like rain seen sideways. The mattress had a notch worn into the center the size of a patient body. I dropped the spread and stared at the nightstand. A leather guest directory sat there. When I opened it, all the pages were blank except one, which had my name written in the same blunt pencil Ralph had used. The desk clock, wherever it was now, coughed and lost another minute. The page said, "Eli, 3:17, hold." A lot can crowd into a small room without touching you. The sense that someone is standing behind you and the conviction they are not. The taste of copper in your mouth while your tongue is clean. The impression that if you apologize to a piece of furniture, it will forgive you. I spoke to the room like you talk to a dog you're not sure is friendly. "I'm here to verify," I said, and the word verify turned cold and blew into my face. The lamp chain lifted by itself a quarter inch and then settled, as if it had nodded. In the mirror, Ralph raised the plunger again, but now I saw the detail that unstitched him. The name patch was not sewn. It was scotch-taped. The tape was yellowed, curling at the edges. A maintenance man who tapes his name is not a maintenance man. He's a note, walking. My red herring failed me in the place red herrings always do. The specific unreal. I smelled lemon and coins like a handshake and looked down at the triangle in my pocket. The rust smear had spread, but not across the paper. It spread across my palm, as if the triangle had exhaled into my skin. I rubbed my hand on my pants, and the stain did not lighten. In the mirror, the stain was on the other hand, on the version of me that lagged a second behind. I pulled the bathroom door fully open. Inside, the tub was dry and clean, but the drain had a ring around it like a wedding band, a small metal circle where something had once tightened and then been unspooled. Above the tub, on the tile, someone had scratched with a key, "Checkout 6." The 6 was smudged, either a 6 or AG. My heart found a left-behind beat and coughed one name into my mouth. My sister. "Call me by Dawn," she had said. Dawn, like a clock that did not know which hand to trust. The counting through the vent hit 12. The neon outside gave up on the V. The room had decided. It wanted me in the ledger. It wanted me at 3:17 in the same blunt pencil. And all my smart little reasons about probation and pay and being a man who finished his tasks with neat handwriting became a rope coiling itself. I made the choice that trapped me. I put my name in the paper ledger. I walked back to the desk because the door opened easily now, and I wrote Eli under the old entries on page 17 with a red clip shining like a small wound. Immediate consequence. The register printed a receipt for room 17, a forced hold, a nightly charge that would roll until I checked out. Delayed echo. The printer did not stop. It ate paper inch by inch and printed the same line again and again, with the time advancing by a minute I could not see. When I returned to the room to finish the absurdity I had begun, the knob turned like it was greeting a friend. The lamp chain lifted by itself and stayed there, waiting for me to pull. I did. The light came on with a color that did not belong to any bulb I knew. The bed looked improved. The notch had smoothed. I heard Ralph in the mirror one last time. "Work order," he said, and this time I saw the corner of the paper he held. Not a form. A page torn from the ledger, the imprint of old names like bruises pressed into it. I reached to snatch it, and my fingers touched glass that felt like cold skin. The twist was not sharp. It was soft and patient. The room did not want to hurt me. It wanted to employ me. The missing minutes, the counting, the polite door, the clipped page. Room 17 did not need guests. It needed a night auditor inside the room to balance it against the rest. Someone to sit on the edge of the bed and keep the number even while time paid a toll. The desk clock lost a minute. My phone finally agreed and lost the same. In the mirror, I watched my face arrive late to my own expression, and I knew I would end the night at 6 o'clock with a receipt that said I had stayed where I had worked. The climax felt like quiet. The vent stopped counting. The neon outside fully declared "No vacancy," and the parking lot seemed to lean away from this door. I sat on the bed and called my sister. The call did not fail. That is important. It rang and rang. I could hear her voice message, and I could hear mine layered a half second behind, as if both of us were narrating from opposite sides of a mirror. I said, "I might be late," and the other me said it after me like an echo in a stairwell. The lamp hummed. The triangle in my pocket warmed like a living coin. Behind the sink mirror, Ralph took off the taped-on name and pressed it to the glass. The tape fell. Under it, no name at all. Just a uniform worn thin where a patch should be. "You'll get used to the minutes," he said, and I realized he had been the last one. Not a man, a position, a work order that kept signing itself. I stood. The floor remembered and did not grab. The door opened when I wanted it to. The corridor smelled less like bleach now and more like lemon warmed by sun. The neon flickered and the V returned long enough to sell the lie. No vacancy slid back to vacancy for a blink, as if nothing had been decided at all. I locked 17 and hung the key on the board where it dragged the others downward with its small brass gravity. The audit finished at 6 a.m. on its own. The printer finally stopped spitting the same line. My sister texted a question mark, then another, then good. I typed, "Yeah," and stared at the word good until it became a sound with no meaning. The manager arrived at 6:10, rubbed his eyes, and said, "You survived." He smelled like sleep. He looked past me at the board. "We keep 17 dark this week," he added, like the weather. "You verified the hold?" "I did," I said, and felt the delayed echo slide behind my heart like a coin under a door. I clocked out. The morning made the motel look smaller, like a photo of itself. The neon went quiet. The V held. The ice machine sounded like a normal machine that had never counted anything but cubes. The clock over the desk had caught up, which should not have been true, but nothing about morning cares to honor night. At home, in the shower, the rust stain on my palm did not wash away. When I pressed my hand to the fogged glass, the print left a circle darker than steam. The triangle from 17 had dried into a curl and would not lie flat. I slid it into the back of my wallet because throwing it away felt like littering in a church. That evening, I checked the ledger before my shift to see if my name looked foolish in daylight. Page 17 was clean. No red clip, no itty, no entries at all. The paper looked new, as if someone had replaced it with a fresh sheet and dared me to deny it. I asked the day clerk about Ralph. She blinked. "Ralph who?" she said, which is a normal thing to say if you have never had a Ralph. She turned the work order clipboard and showed me blank forms. The plunger sat in the corner with a dry rubber cup and a handle that had never been held hard. The manager passed by and clapped my shoulder. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said. "Page 17 looks perfect." He was right. It looked perfect. It looked like a mouth that had just swallowed. I called my sister at 11:58 p.m. to prove I could keep a promise. The call went to voicemail. A half second later, my own voicemail spoke over mine, like a twin who had learned to mock. I hung up and tried again, and the minute hand of the lobby clock lagged where it liked to lag, one breath before obedience. The neon hiccuped and lost its V. The ice machine cleared its throat and found its count. The smell of coins lifted like a curtain too slowly to hide what it meant. The key for 17 leaned heavier than it should. I turned away, because that is what you do when you know you will turn back. And as I did, I felt the paper triangle in my wallet press against me, warm as a living thing. The last thing I will tell you is small. In the guest directory of room 9, where the man who asked about 17 had slept, someone had written in pencil, check out 6. Not a warning, a rule, a rhythm. I rubbed it with my thumb. The writing did not smear. I closed the book and placed it back where it belonged, and the soft tick of the desk clock skipped a minute that had not come yet, as if it had already been spent. If you ever pass a motel with a sign that can't decide if it has a V, take a breath through your mouth. If you smell lemons and old coins at the same time, keep driving. And if you stay and you find a triangle of paper with a date that is not today, fold it twice and do not put it in your pocket. The room will notice you carried it. The room will be polite about it. Rooms like that always are. Story 2. No vacancy. Only name scratched off. I reach a motel just after midnight. The kind of hour when the highway hush makes your own thoughts sound like shoes scuffing a church floor. The office glowed pale. No vacancy burned red in the window, even though the lot was mostly empty. A scatter of doors and one dusty sedan parked like a beetle tipped on its back. The N kept flickering inside the O, like a throat trying to clear. I told myself it was lazy wiring and nothing personal. I told myself a lot of things, didn't I? The owner slid his service window open 2 inches, careful as someone opening a confession. He had a neat name tag that read M, Patel, and a thicker paper ledger that he patted like a patient dog. Room 10, he said. Write your name. Initial here, and do not read the book at night. He smiled after his warning the way people do when they hope you will laugh and forget. It sounded like a joke told in a cemetery, soft and a little too late to help. I laughed anyway, because that is what you do when you're not certain. The ledger had a presence. Its edges swelled with humidity and use, and the blue lines faded under some names, as if the paper had sunk from the weight. Several entries weren't crossed out in tidy bars. They were scratched, jagged, angry, grooves dragged hard enough to plow the fibers. Behind Patel's chair sat a shabby suitcase with both tags torn and the plastic window scuffed cloudy. It looked like someone had tried to erase where it belonged and almost succeeded. I only need 6 hours, I said, feeding my license under the glass like a secret I wanted back. He didn't take it. He just tapped the ledger again, the tip of his pencil hovering over a blank line shaped like a little grave. No vacancy, I asked, tipping my head at the sign that claimed the place was full when it wasn't. He turned it to vacancy without blinking. Then he turned it back to no vacancy with the same calm. We save rooms, he said. Please sign, as if that explained anything at all. I wrote because it felt like admitting I existed. Also because Mia, my fiancée, was waiting on a text that said I was indoors, safe, not asleep at the wheel with my interview suit for a pillow. We were 3 states apart, 8 hours from conversation that might move us closer to her parents, 12 hours from a future that could tilt either way. The pencil made a gentle, steady scratch, like a fingernail tracing a bedsheet. Don't read the book at night, Patel repeated. He closed the ledger with a breath that sounded relieved. Room 10 sat at the end of the second row, beside an ice machine that breathed in and out like it had learned that habit from someone nervous. Hand soap, asphalt, and damp cardboard scented the hallway. I was fitting the key when I heard it from somewhere left, a door labeled 6. Not a knock that asks in. A patient tapping that counts time against hollow wood. I told myself it was pipes or wind fussing with a loose latch. The ice machine coughed once, as if disagreeing. I slipped inside before my reasons got smaller. He texted Mia. In. Talk soon. Love you. The typing dots appeared, vanished. Then her reply arrived with a photo of our cat asleep under my suit jacket. You'll do fine, she wrote. Call if anything is weird. I sent a picture of the empty lot with too much shadow and the sign throbbing red. The N flickered again inside the O like a stuck syllable. When I turned back, the 0 and the metal number 10 on my door had a hairline scratch, a line too straight to be an accident. He pretended he hadn't noticed. Inside, the room was the color of buttered toast left under a heat lamp. The bedspread, wanted to be gold and wasn't. A lamp wore its shade like a hat tilted the wrong way. I could forgive a room a lot if it is quiet. This one wasn't. The ice machine exhaled every few breaths. The tapping from 6 set a low rhythm you could mistake for your heart if you needed to sleep. I set an alarm for 6:30 and flipped the card on the desk. Check out 11 a.m. It promised, but a pencil line above it whispered otherwise. The pencil note, faint and recent, read, scratch 3 a.m. No exclamation point. Just administrative doom. I picked up the room phone to ask what it meant. The cord was missing, the jack a lonely square. I stepped back out. The lot still held more shadow than cars. The office window showed my reflection with "No vacancy" stamped across my chest. As I raised my fist to knock, the sign flipped to vacancy like a wink, then back before my knuckles landed. The suitcase by Patel's chair watched through the glass with its blank tag window like a cataract. "You hear that too?" said a man on my left. He leaned on the railing outside 12 in a motel bathrobe that had known better days. Damp hair. Smile tilted sideways like he couldn't quite keep it polite. The knocking. "It's the register," he said. "People scratch for refunds, and the walls keep the habit." He tapped his chest with 2 fingers. "I scratched mina." Best decision of my life. His eyes had that theatrical redness you get from insomnia or cheap whiskey. He pointed his chin at my door. "If you want your money back, scratch your name." I laughed because somebody needed to be ridiculous. "You want a cigarette?" he asked, producing an empty pack and an unlit lighter the way a magician produces nothing. "I quit," I said. He nodded, solemn as a priest. "Set an alarm anyway," he said. 3 a.m. likes a good listener. He tried his knob. The door wouldn't open. He shrugged, wandered to the ice machine, and stood still with his head near the grill like he could hear words inside the hum. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He didn't go in. I watched him not quite belong. I called Mia, straight to voicemail. I tried again. The second call rang once and tumbled to her recorded voice a half-syllable late. "Leave a message," Mia said, and then the same sentence layered again, just behind the first like an echo reading along. "I made it," I told both MIAs. "I'll call if I wake up to worry. Wish me dull dreams." While I spoke, a faint scratching threaded the background. Pencil on paper somewhere far, but not far enough. I hung up, and the tapping from 6 returned like a metronome that had decided to be a clock. I tried to sleep. You know the trick? Lying still is a test, and asking your pulse to permit noise. The ice machine sighed 1, 2, 3 without numbers. The red sign painted the curtain with its bright bruise. A suitcase was somewhere rolled and snagged. While I began to drift, a different sound replaced the tapping. A page turned with more force than necessary. The sound of paper protesting a decision. I sat up and saw my door standing a 1/4 inch open, not how I remembered leaving it. The draft carried soap and something papery like wet mail. Bravery evaporates when the dark starts to explain itself. I took the tiny motel pen from the directory, as if that counted as a weapon, and stepped into the hall. The office window glowed. Patel bent over the ledger, whispering a rhythm too, even for prayer. He wasn't reading. He was listening, head tilted, eyes on a margin like a doctor waiting for a heartbeat. The scratching came from the book, not the page under his hand, but deeper in the stack like something moving inside drywall. His lips formed names I couldn't hear. He looked up and stilled. "I need a phone cord," I said, holding up the innocent coil of my fear. He handed me a replacement without standing. "Don't read the book at night," he said, as if the instruction could cover every errand. "It makes the names come back for a little while." His eyes were kind in the way of people who can't actually help. I glanced at the suitcase by his chair. The remaining stub on its torn tag showed 3 letters, MIA. A dark smear obscured the rest. "Lost and found," he said. "Always lost, rarely found." Then he closed the ledger gently. I went back to 10 because leaving would have been admitting something I wasn't ready to say. The corridor felt longer, like gum stretching between fingers. The knock in 6 stopped when I passed, and for a moment my footsteps replaced it, which made me speed up without meaning to. Inside, I looped the new cord into the phone and listened to a dial tone that sounded like teeth on glass. I added an alarm for 2:55, another for 3:02. I wanted to be ahead of and behind whatever schedule the pencil had set. You do that too sometimes, right? At 2:37, I woke anyway. The way anxiety is an alarm that doesn't ask permission. The knock had taken on a neighborly quality, like the empty room was leaning on the wall to talk. Through the peephole, the corridor sat quiet except for a suitcase parked outside 8, canvas damp, and tag torn in half. I opened my door enough to taste paper and soap in the air. The sign's red reflection fixed "No vacancy" across my shirt like a label. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia. "Call me now." I did. The line picked up without a hello. "I'm okay." I told her because that's what you say when you want it to be true. "Tell me your room number," she said. "Text me the address. I want to look at it while I fall asleep." I said 10 and read the road sign aloud. She repeated them, slower than her voice, pencil slow. "Babe," I said, try to smile down the line. "Use your phone." The call shivered, like paper shifting. "Don't read the book at night," Mia said, and then in her own voice, embarrassed laugh. I'm tired. Call me when you can't sleep." At 2:55, I walked to the office with an empty ice bucket and a reason. Patel was gone. The ledger lay open to page 8, not 10. A shallow trench cut through a name there, like someone had carved it with a stubborn knife. Next to the groove, graphite glittered like ash. The "No vacancy" sign flared suddenly, painting the margin with red. I started reading without meaning to read. My eyes climbed lines the way hands climb a ladder to a roof you aren't sure will hold. One name pulsed while I looked, not with ink, with pressure from beneath. I told myself to stop. I leaned closer. The pulsing name looked like mine without being mine. Syllables shifted, emphasis misplaced, a stranger's version of me. I mouthed it, and the page shivered. Graphite dust lifted, the lightest breath in cold air. The door of 6 knocked once. The door of 8 knocked once. Something in my chest answered a third time. I closed the ledger, but the pulse didn't stop. It beat under the cover, through cardboard, into the desk. The empty suitcase outside 8 squeaked its wheel an inch, and then stood perfectly still again. Sometimes you choose like a coward and a strategist in the same motion. I decided to scratch my own name before 3. The bathrobe man had sounded like a bad idea wearing a grin, but even bad ideas offer logic you can hold. Choose your damage. I lifted the ledger to the window to use the sign's glow as a light. The "No vacancy" went dark like a hell breath. In the reflection, the parking lot filled with cars that weren't there, and every windshield showed the word "No" from the inside. I turned away because reflections have better posture than truth. I carried the ledger to my room under my jacket, because stealing seemed less dangerous than leaving it where it could look at me. Inside, I laid it on the bed like a baby nobody had taught me to hold. The ice machine exhaled and then went quiet, as if listening. The knocking in 6 halted mid-tap. The suitcase outside 8 squeaked once and settled into attention. When I opened to my page, my name looked smaller than I remembered, a petty insult that still worked. I took the tiny Motel pen like a knife and hovered the tip over myself. It isn't easy to erase yourself. The first line felt like shaving while I shook. The second carved a burr that caught the pen like a hook. When I dragged through the last letter, the room sighed. My alarm blared at exactly 3 o'clock. Immediate consequence. "No vacancy" blinked to vacancy and stayed there like a held smile. The hallway lights warmed. The paper smell eased. Delayed echo. The room phone rang. An internal buzz like a dentist tool. "Front desk," I said because I couldn't think of anything else. In the wire, I heard pencil before I heard voice. "Refund approved," said the bathrobe man, slurred with satisfaction. "You did it. You're nobody now. They can't take what's already gone." He laughed, and it sounded like an eraser scrubbing out a date. "Come outside. See how empty emptiness looks." I hung up without answering because his delight had a bend in it. A grin hung on a crooked nail. Through the peephole, the corridor looked like a photograph taken 1 second too early. The suitcase outside 8 leaned harder toward the door, as if the person who had left it remembered something and tried to come back. I tried Mia again. Voicemail. Then my phone flashed a new message, time-stamped 3:01, although I hadn't heard it arrive. I played it, breathing, pencil, not frantic. The careful stops and starts of someone practicing a signature for a job they want to keep. "I can't get the ink to stay," she whispered, tiny voice swallowed by kitchen air. "Why won't your name hold?" In the background, something tapped once, twice, 3 times. It sounded like a suitcase handle extending. It sounded like a door deciding what it was for. I pressed the phone to my ear until it hurt. I opened the ledger to see what I had done. Where my line cut through my name, the groove shone pale like bone dried clean. Under the groove, letters bloomed again, not ink, but the ghost of ink from a page below rising up like a bruise. The sign's red bled faintly through the paper, though the blinds were closed. The book had its own light, borrowed and stubborn. My phone buzzed with an unknown number that I knew anyway. I answered to the sound of paper drinking water. "The ledger binds," said a voice that wanted to be Patel's. "We save rooms," it added, then coughed like a page, bending and unmending. "Read at night, and you invite them back. Scratch too soon, and you make space for names to climb. Scratch at 3, and you trade places." The line went dead. I thought of the bathrobe man bragging and how his key hadn't turned. I walked to 12 and tried his knob. It swung open on a room arranged for listening. Bedspread neat. Chair dented by the door. On the mirror, a halo of grease where a face had leaned and stayed. He'd left a posture behind, not a person. Back at 6, the knocking resumed, 3 quick and 1 slow. The rhythm of someone who knows you can hear, but does not know if you will help. I set my palm to the door. "Hey," I said. The knocks paused. A fingertip dragged down the far side. Slow scratch spelling a letter. M. Then again I. Then A. My mouth dried. I thought of the tag stub in the office suitcase. I thought of Mia writing my name that wouldn't stay. Red herrings don't often wave. They whisper. This one had whispered refund and left the important part out. The important part was that the bathrobe man had never lit a cigarette, never entered his room, never existed except as advice. The important part was that page 8 had held a trench and now felt polished smooth, as if rubbed by fingers from below. The important part was how warm my throat went when I thought of Mia's voice repeating Patel's warning like a line borrowed from a dream. I had to choose, and the choice could not be put back. Call her and bind us both, or keep her away and hope distance still counted. I wrote on a Motel notepad in block letters, "Do not write my name. Do not read out loud. Call at dawn." I photographed it and sent it to Mia. Then I did something that felt like stepping off a curb I had not seen. I opened the ledger to page 10 and read my own name aloud, letter by letter, as if summoning myself to a roll call. The room's temperature changed from warm to cold like a door opening in winter. The groove softened under my voice. The wall scratched back at me. Somewhere a suitcase stood upright. The point of no return is small in the moment. I read the last letter, and the book sighed like an old floor deciding to carry weight again. Vacancy steadied outside. In the window glass, the lot filled with cars that existed only in reflection, and a shadow stood before every door with a pencil lifted. In my room, the mirror caught a shape at my shoulder. Bathrobe, damp hair. The sideways smile had turned sympathetic, like he'd lost a bet with me. He lifted a pencil to his own reflection and drew it across his throat. No blood, only silence. The trick finally explained itself. The book didn't record stays. It harvested presents. Scratched names weren't cancellations. They were erasures given a new job. If you scratched early, you stepped into the walls with the other advisors, living as warnings with bad humor. If you waited until 3 and spoke, you refused a trade and made the names underneath rise for a breath in your place. I'd spoken at 3:03, too late for clean math. The echo I'd carried since signing crept out, searching for someone written near me. Our ledger lines have been neighbors, hadn't they? The pencil in the binding wrote MIA, patient as if hours meant nothing. I called her again, hard in my teeth. The call connected 2 breaths behind. "Don't write anything," I said. She laughed because she was crying. I kept trying your name, and it wouldn't stick, she said. So I wrote mine next to yours, so the page would know who you belonged to. She apologized like loving was a small crime. On the ledger, at my line, a thin pencil edition appeared after my name, 3 letters that made everything heavy and clear in the same instant. I read the not quite name the book had for me, then hers, then a third one we'd joked about on a rainy Sunday when the world felt generous. The room brightened like someone found the true switch. In 6, the knocking changed to 3 quick taps that sounded like gratitude. In 8, the suitcase rolled an inch toward the door. In the mirror, the bathrobe man shook his head and smiled in defeat. He lifted a hand. I lyfted mina. Our palms met on the glass, cool to cool, a bargain sign without ink. He faded backward like a breath leaving winter. At 3:10, the ledger closed itself, like a mouth deciding it had eaten enough. I slid it under the bed and knew it didn't matter where I hid it. Dawn is not mercy. Dawn is paperwork that resumes. I lay down on top of the blanket. When my alarm trilled at 6:30, the world wore the thin blue of places that believe in routines. No vacancy slipped. The suitcase outside 8 showed a full tag now. A name I didn't recognize reappeared like frost drawn back by sun. The bathrobe man's door stood open to an ordinary, unoccupied room. I checked out. Patel glanced at my line in the ledger and didn't flinch. You read, he said. It wasn't a question. He stamped my receipt with a red stamp that left no ink, only an impression you had to tilt to find. We save rooms, he repeated. You do the math different. Some people do. He nudged a new suitcase, tore me across the floor, not last night's. Fresh canvas. Clean tag. Lost and found, he said. Yours if you want it. It arrived with no sender. The tag was blank. I left it where it waited to learn a name. On the road, Mia finally answered on the first ring. Tell me everything, she said, exhausted and laughing, and I didn't. Not all of it. Some stories are warnings shaped like jokes. I promised to call at lunch. She promised to tear up anything at home that had my name on it, just in case the paper remembered. In my rear view, the motel slipped away and the window reflected cars that the lot didn't hold, all of them idling, all of them patient. The sign blinked once, stubborn and red, as if learning a word takes practice. At the first rest stop, I found a corkboard with push pins and hopeful paper. A flyer asked about a missing suitcase with a half-torn tag. The contact name looked like mine, spelled by a stranger who had only heard it once. I did not take a number. I pressed my finger to the tier and felt cardboard under copy paper and the faint rasp of fiber. The sound made the hair on my arms lift like a pencil beginning a letter on my skin. The ice machine here was the quiet kind, but I kept listening anyway, out of habit and dread. That night, as it always does, came back with new corners. In the hotel by my interview, I set my suit on the chair and placed a notebook by the door. I wrote 3 names on the first page. Mine, Miaese, the one we had laughed about. I closed the cover and set my alarm for dawn. I wanted to wake to what had stayed. The radiator rattled honestly. No knocking, no breathing ice. Still, I fell asleep with the taste of graphite on my tongue and the image of a red sign insisting in an empty lot, the only faithful witness left. Story 3. The ice machine that wouldn't stop the first sound I heard when I checked in was the ice machine dropping something that did not sound like ice, more like dice rolled by a careful hand that already knew the numbers it wanted to see, which is not a feeling you want when you're the only one awake in a hallway that smells like old cold air, right? I was there for a presentation that could fix my next year, maybe the next 5. I told my partner, Lena, I would arrive, shower, and sleep like a decent adult. Room 214 faced a vending alcove with a humming, boxy dinosaur of machine. The floor around it was slick, colder than the carpet 2 steps away. When I held out my hand, the breath of that hallway curled over my palm like a living thing. It was just an appliance, I said. I said it twice to make it true. On the alcove wall, a sticky note was taped under cracked plastic. Don't let it jam. Ever. No smiley face. No exclamation. The tone of a stranger who knows your future better than you. The machine dropped more knot ice. The fall sounded gentle and too heavy, like metal settling. I hit the button for the bucket, and a clatter slid into my cup, an avalanche that stopped short of eager. The pieces looked like cloudy cubes at first, then something thin stuck out of the frost, a corner of paper making a shy escape. My throat went dry in a quiet way. I picked it free with 2 fingers and felt the cold through my nails. It was a receipt, the kind you get when you forget you paid. A Motel logo e recognized. A name misspelled in a way people mishear mine. The time printed at the bottom made me squint. 3:33 a.m. Not earlier. Not now. A timestamp that had not happened yet. I knew how clocks work. I also knew the machine grumbled again, like it was finding its rhythm. A new cube dropped, cloudy and shaking against my other cubes. Inside it, a glint, something like metal curving away. I told myself souvenirs fall into trays all the time. Bottle caps, rings, dust. This felt different. I shook the bucket. The glint wriggled free. A key on a bent tag, frozen inside a cube that had no business holding it. The tag was a circle of laminate with a half name showing. The plastic had cracked. The metal ring had frost grown over it like pale moss. When I breathed on the surface, letters sharpened and then blurred again, like the cold had its own opinion. The machine dropped another shard. Shard felt like the right word. You would have felt it too. I carried the bucket to 214, balancing until my shoulder found the door. The room had that stale warmth of places closed too long with the heat on. I set the bucket in the sink and watched a little halo of vapor rise. The cubes did not melt at normal speed. The key inside its cube did not slick over. My phone buzzed. "Lena, send proof of arrival," she wrote, and a photo of her feet under our blanket. I sent the room number and a picture of the bucket because ordinary objects make good spells. She answered with a heart and a yawn I heard through text. Sleep felt possible until the machine made a new sound. A longer churn, the way a throat works before a voice. The wall shared the vibration with the bed. Not a lot. Enough to make a bedside Bible twitch a corner. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I should ask the front desk for another room. Career. Sleep. Morning. You know the math. I put a pillow over my head. The machine coughed like a person, and the hallway air bled colder under the door, as if the gap were a mouth that had just learned to exhale. Curiosity and fear have the same shoes. I went back out with the bucket and the sharp smile you make when you talk to a machine because a person might hear. The sticky note stared at me. Don't let it jam. Ever. When I lifted the flap and pressed the paddle, the chute groaned like an elevator. The bucket filled and then did not fill. The cubes piled, then faltered, then stuck. Inside the chute, frost had grown like lace. Letters showed there, not carved but nudged by cold, by the shape of moisture being forced to decide. HEL, then the weight of another cube scraped the next letter smudged. I touched the letters with the knuckle of one finger. The cold stung clean, as if it could sanitize fear. HELP finished itself. A polite word. A late word. The machine coughed, and the chute jammed flat. The motor kept working, a good employee who had not been told no. The humming deepened. You know that sound, when a motor leans. The hair on my arms lifted like a crowd. The sticky note trembled. Do not let it jam. Ever. I should have walked away. I pressed the power button instead, and the motor fell silent, which felt like making it worse. The hum ended, and something else began. From the maintenance closet beside the alcove, a dripping started, slow and exact. The door had chains crossed over it and a hotel padlock that had been scuffed by something that wanted to remember the shape of hands. I put my ear to the metal and heard water speak. Not words, intervals. One drop, the small echo, the pause that made the next drop matter. The cold pressed my inner ear until it hurt. I stepped back and my heel slid in the thin ice brine. The bucket tilted. A cube clicked free and cracked on the tile like a knuckle. I jumped at my own clumsiness. The front desk clerk, a young guy with a name tag that read Elio, appeared at the end of the hall like he had been waiting for me to notice him. He had a mop and a cautious smile. The smile of someone who knows his job includes pretending that machines do not sometimes breathe. Just plumbing, he said, because we both needed an easy sentence. Pipes echo. The old drains sing. He mopped around my feet, neat circles like a ritual. If it jams, he added, quieter, call me. "Do not reach in. This one has a reputation." I asked because you always push a little when you're scared. "What happened to the last reputation?" He laughed like I'd stepped on a joke. "The housekeeper fixed it last time," he said. "She said the noise was just a loose supply line. She was good with repairs. She has not been in for 2 weeks, but her cart still shows tasks. Autoscheduling. You know how it is." He set the mop head into the bucket, then looked at the sticky note and looked away. "If you can sleep, sleep," he said. "These things sound bigger when you listen." Back in my room, I let the TV mutter. I don't remember the show, just a laugh track that moved like water at a party you cannot leave. At 2:47, I woke to the sound of ice dropping hard, and then something softer sliding along the chute, as if it had learned. I opened the door. The hallway was fog-cold, like a freezer door left open too long. Frost had formed on the runner, curling around the edges of the vending alcove like handwriting. Letters glittered there, sharper than before, as if practice helps even for ice. Names this time, not words. Lena, spelled correctly, then smeared by a fresh spill. I wiped the frost with my sleeve and made it worse, drawing the letters out long like threads. The machine did not approve and dropped 3 cubes at once. The chute stuck again. The motor leaned toward a growl. The sticky note shivered. My partner's name bled back into place on the floor. My phone buzzed with a new message and a photo of our sink at home, where the faucet had begun to drip exactly on a beat. "Do you hear this too?" she wrote. Or, "Am I inventing patterns to make you call?" The timestamp read 3:31 a.m. She had not sent it yet. Every story has a time that wants it. The receipt in my bucket. Her text from the near future. The sticky note that believed in 3:33 without saying it. I made a choice that you will judge with the generous hindsight of someone not there. I unplugged the ice machine. The hum died, and a corridor of silence fell forward like a curtain. The dripping in the chained closet got louder because other noise moved out of its way. Then something in the machine answered back, a whispering rush like breath being pulled through teeth. The chute exhaled frost that wrote my name wrong and then corrected it. Immediate consequence. The jam loosened. A thin sheet of cloudy ice slid out and shattered, small fragments like glass from a picture frame, with seeded stuff inside that caught the light. A tangle of threads. A corner of paper that might have once been a boarding pass. A shape that was probably a button from a nurse smock. I did not want to inventory. I did anyway, because the mind loves lists when it is scared. The machine shuddered once, twice, like a person suppressing a cough. Then the maintenance closet drip stopped, which was worse than any sound I had heard so far. Delayed echo. The closet door swung inward on its chains with an inch of give, like someone on the other side had removed a pressure. Cold wafted out in a polite line. I smelled cleaner, and something sweet under metal. The smell of pennies, if pennies loved laundry. I told myself I would not. I pressed my hand to the chains and felt them cold enough to print their links into my skin. The padlock had a frost star in its keyhole. My eyes adjusted to the dark seam where the door had cracked. Down inside was space, not a closet, a shaft whose breath fogged my breath. The frost letters on the floor around my shoes shifted like a nervous crowd when someone stands. L-I-S-T-E-N, the pattern said, and then the machine coughed in a wordless way like it had used itself up and still had to deliver one more thing. I looked at the unplugged cord snaking from the wall and how the machine swore it was turned off. Then it dropped another cube. This one was a domed shear, like half a marble. Inside glowed a tiny light, a shape like a phone screen with a notification lighting it up. I did not touch it, and I want to touch it more for that. The sticky note had curled at the edges. The tape gave a tired sigh. Another note had been stuck under it once and removed, leaving a rectangle of cleaner wall, like someone had redacted a line from a warning. I thought of Elio's housekeeper, her tasks still being assigned long after she had stepped away. I thought of the phone dimly glowing under ice. I made the second choice I could not unmake. I pushed a finger into the chute to flick the dome into my bucket. The chute grabbed the warmth from my skin with a greedy patience. I hissed, which was silly. It was only cold, until it was not. Because it was not just cold. The surface of the chute felt like the outside of a wrist. Not warm, Real in the way living things are real when you touch them by mistake. The frost wrote another name beside my shoe. Chia R-O-L. A neat, capable name. The dome clicked into my bucket and cracked open like an egg. The phone light blinked for air. A screen showed a to-do list dated 2 weeks ago tomorrow. Hallway 2, unclog ice. Room 214, towels. Room 214, check on guest. The phone went dark again, but my own screen lit up without touching. 3:33 a.m., Lena wrote, but the bubble hung without sending, as if the bar at the top of the hour could not let it cross. The maintenance door creaked another inch. The chain scraped softly like someone from inside had reached to test them and found cooperation. Dripping resumed. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Like a set of dice that knows lucky numbers. The machine pulsed and dropped a single long shard that struck the bucket lip. The shard's center held the ghost of a plastic sleeve where a name tag might go. The letters fogged and cleared. I formed the syllables without planning to. Carol, I said. The shaft exhaled colder. I plugged the machine back in because some warnings deserve obedience after you test their patience. The hum came back like a relieved friend who forgives you for nothing. The jam cleared itself with a board rattle. Frost on the floor reseated a fraction, pulled back into patterns I could not quite read. My heart had settled into a pace you could call reasonable. Then the red display on the machine's face blinked a number without reason. 0214. Not a code I understood. Not a price. Not a date. My room number. The display held it until I understood, then returned to idle. I went back to my bed because sometimes you walk away to prove walking is possible. The moment I lay down, the TV raised its volume one notch like a polite cough. An infomercial host offered me knives that could cut a shoe. Lena's unsent bubble snapped across at 3:33 and resolved into a call. I answered before it rang. Her first breath sounded white, the breath people have when they open a freezer door and smile, because they have not been there all night. I just dreamed I was folding towels, she said, in a hallway that wasn't ours. I stacked them on a cart and kept counting to make sure they made a neat wall. Tell me more, I said, already standing, confusing myself with the man who talks tough about not going back to a place he cannot avoid. The cart wheel squeaked, she said, and I heard a very quiet squeak, not over the phone. Right beside my door, a man asked if I had a key. I said no. I showed him my name tag, and it was blank. I kept folding. I kept hearing something drop like a coin. She yawned. The squeak outside my door rolled away. I'm being weird, she said. Send me a photo of the bed to prove it is not made of ice. I sent a picture of the ordinary bed on purpose. She sent me a photo back of warm hands and a mug. In the corner behind her, our sink dripped in a rhythm that had picked up speed. I told her to put a towel over the faucet and call a night charm. She laughed like you laugh when you decide to obey alchemy for 1 hour. Then she asked me something simple that I did not want to answer. Do you hear the same sound there? I looked at the door. The squeak had returned closer. The ice machine counted quietly like an eager accountant in the next room. My phone buzzed with a new notification. A digital receipt from the motel's laundry vendor. An auto email confirming a subscription payment. The timestamp read 3:34 a.m. and the pickup time read 4:10 outside my door. I do not get laundry receipts when I sleep. I do not arrange pickups in nightmares. I opened the door. The hallway was empty except for a folded towel set placed neatly on the carpet by my shoe. Not hotel towels. My towels. The pattern matched our apartment. The tag said our building. The machine dropped a cube like an apology that had learned to speak. By then the dread loop was efficient. Hint. Wait. Escalate. I picked up the towel and it was not cold. It had the warmth of something that had been carried at human temperature and set down with intention. The frost letters reformatted at my feet. F-O-L-L-O-V. The maintenance door had stopped breathing like a door. It breathed like a person. A second sticky note had slid visible under the first where the curl gave up more. The corner of a word showed. Turn. My fingers worked the tape up. Turn water off first, it said, and below that, in smaller, careful script, if jam, the voices slip. I'm not a hero. I am the person who complicates advice with pride. I had already unplugged it. I had already replugged it. The machine was behaving, and my partner had dreamed of towels that were not ours and a man asking for keys. I carried the towel back into my room, placed it over my own sink, turned my faucet off to see if the universe cared. The drip stopped, and the hallway returned to its softer hum. I almost slept. Then the vendor app in my email dinged. Pickup delayed, it read. New ETA, 5 a.m. The time my night ended. I felt seen by the wrong witness. At 4:07, a cart will squeaked again. I stuck my head out in the cold that had softened as dawn practiced. A housekeeping cart sat at the far end. No one pushed it. The spray bottles had been arranged like a small choir. The slot for the name tag on the handle showed nothing, then fogged, then whispered Carol before clearing, the way Frost does when someone moves by. I said her name like a test. The ice machine answered by dropping a cube that skittered across the floor like a playing piece that had been told to take its turn. It lodged against the cart's left wheel and melted just enough to stick. Revelation appears as paperwork here. I lifted the cube. Inside, in a bubble, a round pin swam. A little enamel badge with a cartoon snowflake and the word JM. The machine was warning itself in the only language it could produce, or was tagging me. I don't know why I pocketed it, but I did. The maintenance door scraped again. The padlock clicked without opening, the way a throat clicks when someone stops their words. I knelt and pressed my eye to the seam. Inside, metal steps descended. Not a ladder, shallow stairs, beaded with water that refused to drop. The cold down there was not air. It was a schedule. Point of no return, small as always. I turned the water off at the main valve by the pipe elbow, the one the sticky note had been protecting under a flap of tape. The hallway drew a breath and held it. The machine fell quiet for the first time, truly quiet, rotating parts, choosing rest over duty. From below, a hush rose where dripping had been, like a room where someone has finally stopped pacing. I told my better self to leave. I put my hand through the chain gap and unhooked the lowest chain from its ring instead. The closet door opened enough to admit me sideways. The stairs led into a space that was too treated to be a crawl space and too ungenerous to be a room. The walls were not walls. They were the sides of the ice machine descended here. A throat extended downward into a catch basin I could not see. The cold was organized. You know when a freezer has been closed so long that the smell becomes a thing? It had that, but neat. The metal handrail held frost and fingerprints that did not belong to me. I set my foot on the first tread and felt the stair remember weight. 3 steps down, the machine above gave one soft thunk like a valve closing with satisfaction. I heard something move under my shoe. The step flexed as if it were tired. The frost on the walls arranged itself as I watched. Lena again, then a new curve, then the start of my last name. I did not want to see it finished. I moved because movement is a spell too. At the bottom, a tray spread under the throat of the machine like a Japanese garden designed by someone who loved white. Things lay under the ice there, not gruesome things. A key tag, a badge, a paper wristband from concert. The part of a room that declares a life when you empty pockets at night. The voices came when I reached toward the tray. Not loud. The sound you hear underwater when someone is speaking above. I pulled my hand back and they quieted. I leaned closer and they rose. The machine had been making eyes from moisture and names and routine, smarter than a freezer deserves. When it jammed, the things it contained gathered until the throat could not tolerate more, and then it tried to send them back as warnings. If you cleared the jam by hand, you made space for the voices to slip out of their worrying and into you. That was the bargain the sticky note had tried to write without drama. I looked up the stairs and saw the rectangle of the hallway. Frost rimmed it like a postcard. Beyond it, the red exit sign glowed proof that other rules still mattered. I looked down and saw my receipt cube in the bucket glowing faintly, 333 stamped inside like a heartbeat that had been set by a strange nurse. The twist was not sharp enough to cut. It was the calm realization that the machine's schedule was not arbitrary. It had learned checkout times, vendor routes, alarms. It was keeping us from overlapping in ways that snapped. Instead, it overlapped us in inches, a towel here, a badge there, a name pressed in a cold and released to the floor. I took the badge out of my pocket and held it up. Jam watched me with its cartoon snowflake smile. "Carol," I said softly, "if you want me to carry anything out, blink the light." The light above the tray dimmed. The phone under the broken dome brightened. I slid my fingers under the iced edge of a key tag. It gave. Under it, the tray, cracked in a web. Water should have run. It rearranged instead, flowed uphill under my touch, made a small wall around my hand, as if to keep warmth limited. The voices grew, asking without words, not pleading, not angry. Enlisting. I could have left then with only a story and a few useless souvenirs. I made the last choice, and it was practical, which is how bad choices get dressed. I reached deeper and cleared 3 objects at once. The jam broke. Above me, the machine exhaled a satisfied gust and began to run again with a lighter sound. Immediate consequence. The hallway fog lifted. The frost letters on the runner retreated like a tide does when it considers returning later. The dripping resumed in a domestic pattern, the one your kitchen has when you forget to turn the faucet all the way. The delayed echo walked into my room. You will say it was only air. You weren't there. I heard a cart will squeak over my carpet. I heard my television lower its volume so something else could be heard. The towel I had brought in sat folded on the chair and poured a very small line of clear water into the mug Lena had told me to keep by the sink. The mug steamed once. Then it did not. In the bathroom mirror, Frost wrote a line at the bottom edge where the glass meets the frame. "Be kind," it said, which is either the best advice or not advice at all. The presentation went fine. That matters because it is the kind of fact that makes a horror feel less greedy. I said my lines with the leave-behind chill still in my bones, and the client nodded like he had neighbors who ran their machines late. After, Lena texted a photo of our kitchen towel pinned neatly over the sink with a clothespin I did not remember owning. The drip had stopped. The floor was dry in a way floors brag. She added a second photo of our building's laundry room. The ice maker I had never noticed was working again, and someone had taped a sticky note to it. "Turn water off first," it read. "If jam, the voices slip." The handwriting looked like mine if my hand had been very patient. I didn't reply right away, because some echoes should be allowed to echo. On my drive home, I stopped at a rest area. The ice machine, there was the quiet type. A kid filled a cup and laughed when a cube shaped like a letter fell into his drink. His mother plucked it out and let it melt on her palm. The letter was a C, and when it shrank down it still kept its curve, because letters are stubborn. That night, I put the jam badge on the inside of our cabinet door. I turned off our faucet with the easy respect of a new habit. At 3:33 a.m., I woke without a reason and checked my phone. No messages, no receipts, just a photo from Lena with a caption. "Look, on our bathroom mirror, in the faint residue that always gathers at the edge, a curve had formed. The start of a letter, not a warning. A signature of someone practicing being here again. I didn't tell Lena the part one noticed next. The curve could have been a C, or the beginning of an L. When I went back to work the following week, the motel felt ordinary in daylight. Elio waved like we were colleagues. "Plumbing is better," he said. "Or maybe we quit listening so hard." He wiped down the sticky note and pressed the tape. Behind the front desk, a lanyard with a blank plastic sleeve hung on a hook. It caught light and let it go. "Did the housekeeper come back?" I asked, try to be casual over a question that had teeth. He blinked like I'd said a name from a dream. "Schedule says she did 3 rooms yesterday," he said. "Funny, no one saw her. I carry my bag upstairs." The machine dropped a single cube with a sound that was more hello than warning. I let it be. I did not lean in, because curiosity and invitation dress alike, and I had learned the difference a little. In my room, I set the towel on the chair and felt the air like a friend who knows where your refrigerator hangs. The hallway breath cooled once, as if practicing patience. Somewhere below, in the place a closet should be and a throat had been, water collected its rhythm for another night. If you ever hear an ice machine dropping more than ice, you will remember this and pretend you do not. If a sticky note warns you in a tone that knows you, tilt your head and choose a smaller pride. And if you find a badge in your pocket that you do not remember earning, set it somewhere you will see it when you are about to reach your hand where cold turns to names. Some machines only want to keep the schedule from snapping. Some want your help learning which names to send back. Story 4. Night clerk in the mirror. The lobby mirror was too clean, the kind of glass that makes the air feel refrigerated and your reflection lag by a half breath, like it's buffering you before admitting you. And it was 11:53 p.m. on my first night shift, which is a mean time for doubts. I took the job because bills don't listen to explanations. The motel sat between a dead gas station and a freeway that never slept. The wall clock above the desk ran 5 minutes fast. Manager's orders, he said, though it felt like the mirror's idea. The coffee smelled burnt, but the pot brimmed as if no one had ever poured a cup. I signed the digital check-in forms, then a paper ledger because the owner likes tradition, and under the desk, I found a taped note in tidy block letters. Never look when you hear your own name. My name is Jonah. If you've ever counted a night like beads, you know the rhythm. Keep the job, pay the clinic, call mom at dawn. By 12:40 a.m., the parking lot had settled into quiet, and in the mirror a woman with a braid sat in the last lobby chair, even though the chair was empty behind me. I told myself fatigue can turn a coat into a person if you stand it right. The coffee hissed. I poured a cup to prove the world still worked, but the pot stayed full like it refilled from its own shadow. Guests came slow and apologetic. 2 keycards, 1 cash customer shaped like a question mark. The ledger collected their signatures like neat bruises. A few names didn't match any reservation in the system. No room numbers beside them, just dates and a little flourish like someone proud to still be writing. In the mirror, my pen lagged a heartbeat behind my hand. At 1:12 a.m., a man in a faded blue shirt leaned in the staff doorway with a paper cup. Hair cut like a decision. "You're the new night," he said. "Dale." He slapped the coffee maker like it owed him respect, and the pot didn't empty. "Best perk here," he grinned. "Never runs out." He winked at the mirror, which winked back 5 minutes early. "Don't let the glass sell you the lag trick," he said. "Gets everyone once." "Why is the clock wrong?" I asked. "Manager hates lateness," he said, glancing up at the fast clock like it was a friend. "We end at 6, whatever it says." He slid past me toward the lobby, and for a second he moved in the mirror first, then in the room, as if the glass got dibs. I told myself that's just how angles work when you're tired. The first wrong thing came quiet. I heard my name. Not loud. Behind me, the way my mother says it when she doesn't want to shout. "Jonah." I turned before I remembered the note. In the mirror, I was still looking down at the ledger. In the room, I had already moved. The braid woman raised a finger in the glass, like a librarian. I faced the desk again and whispered the note to myself like a prayer. By 2:18, the mirror had collected reflections I couldn't place. A man at the vending machine, though our machine was unplugged. A teenager on the floor with a travel brochure printed in a font older than either of us. A clerk in my blue shirt walking past behind me, which the camera feed did not show. The coffee tasted like pennies and sleep. At 2:59 by my phone and 3:04 by the wall clock, the pot overflowed in a slow, steady sheet even though I hadn't poured in 20 minutes. I lifted it. It remained full, stubborn as a lie. In the glass, my reflection lifted 5 minutes late and did nothing helpful. The braid woman watched with patience I didn't deserve. I checked older pages of the ledger. Some entries looked more like practice than names. Loops, flourishes, initials repeated with love. No rooms beside them. The dates were always one day away from something else. Far down a staff page, I found Dale's last name. In the mirror, he brushed past me again, smiling like a man who was good at night. At 3:08 by my phone and 3:13 on the wall, the mirror fogged in a soft oval, lower than my face, like a forehead leaned there from the other side. "Jonah," it said, my mother's voice exactly, and I froze with both hands on the counter. The note under the desk pressed into my memory like a coin. Never look when you hear your own name. The coffee calmed as if grateful. I called the manager to ask for an adult answer. Got voicemail recorded angry and edited tired. In the mirror, he stood behind me and straightened his tie 5 minutes ahead of my failure to reach him. "Exhaustion plays tricks," he'd said at training. Don't invent problems. I didn't feel like I was inventing anything at all. At 3:30 honest and 3:35 mirrored, the bell above the door swung in the glass before it swung in the room. A gust of air arrived on schedule. The dread loop did what dread does. Hint, wait, escalate. I stood in front of the mirror with a towel, pretending I could wipe whatever this was away. The surface left no streaks because nothing touched it. The towel stayed dry. The glass felt warmer than glass. At 4:06 reel, for 11 mirror, a guest stumbled in with a nosebleed. I gave him tissues and refused his money. He left red moons in the trash. In the mirror, the moons appeared 5 minutes before my hands moved. I checked the badge on Dale's shirt in the reflection. It didn't say Dale. It said night clerk, like a position facing a position. At 4:32, Dale returned in both places, which made me feel sane for a blink. It's just fatigue, he said, sipping what looked like coffee. Or caffeine. The mirror of the working poor. He laughed. You making it? I nodded. Clock says you're almost there. He tapped the fast clock with fondness. The pot burbled happily. Who's the woman with the braid? I asked, naming harmless things to make them harmless. First month you see everyone, he said. The mirror remembers what we forget. He rubbed his badge. In the glass, it remained blank. Just don't do the one wrong motion, he added, suddenly serious. Looking when it calls you. He stared at the mirror. It uses voices you can't ignore. He set his cup down in the reflection. The counter in the room had only my cup. Don't be here past 6, he said, and it sounded like 2 places at once. He walked toward the staff hall. In a glass, he walked toward the mirror and did not come out. I followed down the hall, because concern sometimes pretends to be courage. The hall was empty. A mop leaned like a man with good posture. I tried calling my mom to hear a living voice, and by my nerves a softer shape. 1 bar blinked, then none. The lobby radio crackled, then returned to an older song that sounded like closing time. I jiggled the back door, thinking fresh air would embarrass the fear out of me. The lock resisted like a stubborn jaw. From a mirror came the faint, steady ticking of the wall clock 5 minutes ahead, an offbeat metronome. It made the real second hand feel lazy, which is how small eyes get strong, isn't it? Back at the desk, the note under the tape had an imprint beneath it I hadn't noticed, a faint second line pressed through from a previous night. They lie about the time. My phone bars thinned, then failed. The parking lot became a picture of itself. In the mirror, dawn lightened 5 minutes early like a promise that wasn't for me. The coffee pot stayed full and hot as a hand. Choice came like a small, useful sin. I fetched a spare sheet from housekeeping, climbed on the counter, and threw it over the mirror. Immediate consequence. The coffee pot made an offended cluck and went quiet. The burnt pennies smell thinned. The fast clock's second hand jittered and stopped. The lobby grew so still I could hear the parking lot light hum. Delayed echo. The sheet pushed outward, gentle as a forehead. The ledger under the lamp warmed like a hand held too long, and ink below the top page ghosted upward. Names rose, faint and shy. D. Harper C. Rhodes, initials that felt like people who had practiced until the flourish became a habit. My mother's pills cost what they cost. I did quiet math and hated it. When the sheet pushed outward again, I pressed my palm to it the way you hold a child back from a busy curb. The fabric was warm, as if breath gathered there and waited for a better argument. You're silly, my mother's voice said from the linen, affectionate and impatient. Jonah, look, the note under the desk warmed in my pocket memory. Never look when you hear your own name. I stepped down, made fresh coffee for the first time all night, and watched the pot remain stubbornly empty, as if I'd insulted the arrangement. That's when the red herring arrived with excellent timing. I see you figured out the hack, Dale said, strolling from the staff hall like he owned mornings. Cover it and the lag stops. It's caffeine and exhaustion, kid. He pinched the sheet, testing the curtain. Careful. Manager loves this thing like it's family. He touched the fast clock. It didn't tick. You don't want to be the one who broke the ambience. Dale, I said, holding the name like a fragile cup. What's your last name? He smiled. Old habit. I keep it to myself. There's a photo on the staff wall. I pushed. He grinned. Used to be, he said. We downsized the grates. He tipped an invisible cap and moved toward the sheet like a man leaving a backyard party. "Don't stay past 6, he said again, and the way he meant it tightened something around my ribs. He vanished behind the linen. The sheet drew inward an inch and settled. I opened the manager's old binder under the drawer he believes thieves never check. Photos from a decade back. Smiles like rent checks cashed. Names in ink that bled in summer. Dale stood there twice. Hair from 2 seasons, tie from 2 decades. The caption under the second photo had been scratched out with a key. In the mirror, a fingertip dragged a groove across blank glass to match it. Point of no return is always small when it arrives. I lifted the sheet just enough to peep because not brave people still need to know. The mirror was too close. The surface pushed at my breath like warm skin. "Jonah," my mother's voice said, tender and urgent, and I looked for her without remembering the rule, because you always look for your mother first. Immediate consequence. The coffee surged and spilled over like a cheer I did not want. The mirror did not yank me. Politeness has teeth. It offered employment. In a glass, the lobby 5 minutes ahead looked fresher, lit like a brochure. The braid woman smiled with a relief I envied. Dale stepped beside me, restored, and set a steaming cup I could smell as a memory. "We keep the pot full," he said, muffled by the distance between glass and air. "We keep the place running." I did the only math that made sense. I called Mom on speaker and put the phone face up on the counter. Her laugh filled both rooms at once and bent the mirror's voice into harmony. 2 singers trying to lead the same song. "You at work?" she asked. I had that dream where someone steals 2 numbers and puts them in their pocket. I held the sheet like a shield while the mirror pressed gently against it. 5:59 became 6:04 on the wall clock that refused to move. Climax is a pretty word for the ugliest minute. In the reflection, the manager's key turned and the bell rang. 5 minutes later, it happened here. He stepped in, stiff with sleep, saw the sheet, and made the shape of a fine that means not fine. "What did you do?" "Saved your coffee pot," I said, hearing how stupid it sounded. He tugged the linen. The mirror shone, already finished with me. In it, he stood behind the counter 5 minutes ahead, smiling like a man promoted by fate. "Do not look when it says your name," I told him, because kindness is contagious when you're terrified. The mirror spoke his name in a voice he couldn't afford to ignore. He turned. The glass did what it had always done. It didn't swallow him. It hired him. He smoothed his tie in the reflection like a dream he'd practiced in other windows. He took his place behind the desk on the far side and poured coffee for us here. The twist arranged itself without fanfare. The orphan's signatures in the ledger weren't guests at all. They were clerks who learned to sign where no room lived. The coffee never emptied because someone in the mirror kept pouring 5 minutes ahead. The clock ran fast because the mirror's shift ends first and needs a body in hours to make sense of its schedule. The note under the desk wasn't superstition. It was a chain, paper instead of metal, written by hands that liked the idea of being believed. Fallout came small and domestic. The pot stayed hot, but mortal. The lag thinned to a smug delay. The braid woman left nothing but the scent of wool. The manager shook my hand and thanked me for covering, the way a man thanks a colleague who cleaned up a spill. He did not remember the sheet. Mom texted 3 hearts and a weather report and a photo of her pill sorter filled like a weak promise to behave. I did not get fired. I did not quit. I taped the note flatter with fresh strips like a prayer made visible. I set the filter just so. I checked the time on my phone first and the wall second. On my way out, my reflection stayed a beat to finish a gesture, like tying a ribbon and handing me the box late. I didn't like it. I liked that I didn't like it. That night, brushing my teeth at home, the bathroom mirror fogged in an oval lower than my face, like a small forehead leaned and waited. I wiped it and saw, for a blink, tidy block letters backward from the other side. Never look. The steam cleared and left me alone. I set my alarm 5 minutes early out of spite and comfort now. If any of this is caffeine and exhaustion, I welcome better tricks. If the glass whispers your name, do the ugliest brave thing and look down. Tie your shoe. Count to 6. Pour the coffee and let it spill. The night only wants a clerk it can predict. Be a complication. And if you can't, if the voice is someone you miss and cannot refuse, tell them another story first. Make them listen to the end. Make them earn the turn. Story 5. Keycard of the wrong year, the first time the keycard blinked. The logo on its face wasn't the one printed on the lobby brochures. It was a thinner, cursive name like a signature that got married and kept the maiden, and when I held the card up to the hallway light, it smelled like dust folded in a cheap perfume. The kind you remember because the person wore too much, which is not an omen you want if you've got a transfer interview at 8 in the morning, is it? The clerk with a crooked tie watched the logo flicker and shrugged like he'd seen strangers drown in their own cups. "Printer glitch," he said, tapping the laminate. "Old batch from the previous owner. You're in 214. Wi-Fi code on the receipt. Breakfast is brown and early." He slid the register across. The names above mine had dates beside them from decades back, written with a slanty hand that loved loops. "When did the motel change owners?" I asked because the logo looked like a year you could smell. "Long before both of us," he said, and the radio in the lobby hissed old static like it enjoyed secrets. In the hallway, the wallpaper was new in color and old in memory. Along the baseboards, faint outlines of furniture shadowed the paint. Low dressers, a phone stand on tiny casters, a planter at the dead end that no longer existed. I followed the ghosts like a touring docent and stopped at my door. The reader chirped when I swiped, but not the digital chirp you know. The beep had weight, a cold magnetic tone that brushed my teeth the way winter does. Inside, the room was beige with ambitions. The clock on a nightstand flashed 2:14 with confidence and never changed again, as if it had found its calling. Listen, I wanted to sleep like a believer. I wanted to text my partner Mara something dull like "made it. Bed is rectangular. Will be saintly tomorrow." She had rolled her eyes on the phone when I said roadside and smell like stories. "Get the job," she said. Not a ghost. I sent her the door photo, 214 in nickel numbers. I sent the view, a parking lot, a soda machine listing like a bored zookeeper. Then I noticed the motel photo on the dresser. Same number on a shiny brass plaque. Same door, different facade. The building wore stone and a neon script sign that matched my flickering keycard, like a cousin dressed for a wedding you did not attend. I told myself these were coincidences that like to hug. I showered. The steam smelled faintly of roses that had been sealed in a hot car. When I clicked off the fan, the air carried a distant radio song that belonged to a voice who smoked, the kind of chorus that talks to your shoulder more than your ear. It wasn't coming from the TV. The screen reflected my face and a smear of hallway light and nothing else. The clock watched me at 2:14 like a waiter pretending not to wish for tips. I opened the door to listen, and the scent outside was house dust that had taken perfume lessons. The night had that motel hallway hush where your own breathing feels like a neighbor. At the far turn, static murmured again, then tuned itself into a verse about someone named Lorraine. I stepped toward it, good shoes on loud carpet. The outlines on the wallpaper sharpened. The ghost furniture suddenly the right height to bump your hip. By the ice machine, a metal mark on the wall showed where a payphone had once been screwed tight. I stood where it would have stood, and the radio slipped closer like a person. I swiped my key card through the air like an idiot wand, and the beep came again, colder, as if it was waking up. That's when the dread loop began. Hint. Wait. Escalate. Back in my room, I checked the clock. 2:14 held like a breath. I waved my phone near the radio static, and the song failed my microphone, like it didn't want to be seen by someone who carried a camera everywhere. In the lobby, the clerk's TV muttered baseball from another city, but when I asked if he could hear the music in the hall, he turned up the volume and said I should get some rest if I cared about my morning. "Printer glitches," he repeated, nodding toward my card. "They look weird, but they open just fine." I tried to obey. You know how it is when you chase a small odd thing around a room and tell yourself you could stop if you wished. The sheets were rough the way fabric is when bleach forgets to apologize. I must have slept because I woke to the cold beep at my door, the reader chirping even though no one swiped. I jerked upright. The clock said 2:14, drunk on itself. A whisper passed the bottom of the door like a draft that had learned to speak. Dust and perfume again, warmer now. I opened the door a careful inch, and the hallway was empty in the way roads are empty right after a last car. I made the worst promise a tired person can make. I told myself I would swipe the car one more time to prove it was me doing the noise. I slid it. The reader lit chartreuse, and the beep echoed down the corridor as if the walls had been waiting to hear it. 2 steps. The carpet felt threadbare under my feet, the pattern older and louder, a little less hotel, a little more boarding house. I could see it, the missing phone, the planter that left a circle in paint, the low dresser where a suitcase might rest while silence packed itself. Then my phone buzzed. It was Mara. "Is your TV on some retro station?" she wrote. "I hear old music on your voice texts." I hadn't sent any. She attached a 6-second clip, our usual joke. In it, my breathing and a woman's radio voice overlapped. Mara said my name like a shrug. The song in the clip sang about taking the long road home because the short one wasn't honest, which is a lyric you hear only once and don't ever forget. I typed back that she was hearing bleed from the lobby. The typing dots appeared. "Get the job," she wrote, which is love a bad suit, and I love her for it anyway. The second beat arrived on time, which is the worst way. Curiosity ate the cold and left ambition alone. I swiped again, slower, because part of me believed tone mattered. The beep descended a note, reached into the floor, and brought up a shadow. The hallway air pressed at my chest a little. I looked at the door across from me. The number plaque read 212, but under that a brass circle had been screwed in at an earlier time. Room letters or a star. Something held precisely removed. I knocked, because people knock when they don't understand what pressing the intercom button of a decade means. No one answered. The radio in the distance cut to static, then back into a commercial for a diner that no longer existed. Back in my room, the wallpaper's ghost furniture had crept into my peripheral. The dresser in the outline had knobs that mine lacked. The old phone stand had a rectangular base where mine showed nothing at all. I took a picture, and my camera flattened it into digital drywall. If you've ever felt a room stop pretending it isn't watching you, you know the taste my tongue decided to try. The keycard sat on the dresser beside the old motel photo, its modern logo flickering to the curse of one, as if it was trying on its maiden name again, and how late is too late to rehearse your youth. Here's where I admit something I don't like about myself. I wanted evidence more than I wanted sleep. If this were a story I was telling you from the other end of a bar, I'd lie and say I turned all the lights off and fell immediately into dignity. Instead, I did the impulsive, dumb thing that still feels like a brave thing in the dark. I went to the desk and asked the clerk to walk with me to 214. He brought the master key because I think he'd seen men like me go get themselves trapped in their brains. "Printer glitch, sure," I said, showing him the card face. "But what about the clock?" I pointed to 214, stuck like a stubborn word. He laughed without humor. "Batteries," he said, or a kid pulled the tab wrong. He tapped the nightstand. "These are cheap." He swiped the master, and the reader beeped low enough to tickle bone. "They all do that sometimes," he added, flippant, but I watched him flinch. He didn't step inside. He peered at the old photo and nodded. "We keep that around for the owner who thinks memory sells," he said. "People like to pretend rooms used to be nicer." Behind him, the wallpaper outlines deepened with red patience. At real 214, as my phone watched the minute come true, the reader flashed without my hand anywhere near it. The door drifted inward the way doors do for maids in movies. The clerk frowned at the air. "Weird," he said, and fumbled a pocket for batteries he definitely did not have. The smell of dust and roses walked out of my room and into the hall like a person trying not to cry. He cleared his throat and said all key cards sometimes ping the lock from your pocket. I didn't have a pocket. I wore shorts with a drawstring like a man who had not planned on negotiations with time. I pressed the door wider. The room was my room. The carpet pattern obeyed. The TV stared. But the nightstand clock no longer flashed. It read 214 in black on silver, and a second hand ticked backward once, then stopped dead again. On the dresser lay a Motel matchbook stamped with the cursive logo. Under it, an embossed note card with house rules. No smoking. Ice after 10. No ladies calling after midnight. I picked it up, and it was not a repro. The paper had yellowed edges where fingers live. Behind me, the clerk said something about stage dressing and how the owner loved a theme. Then my phone stopped having bars like a child stops having patience. The radio static grew into a clear, low song. The window showed the same parking lot except for a car I had only ever seen in my dad's photo album. A heavy Chevy, pale green. The soda machine outside my door had transformed into something stubbier with a bottle opener mouth. If you have ever seen a room try on a year like a coat, you will know the slow way it makes you agree. I looked at the key card in my palm. It flickered to cursive and stayed there, as if it had finally spoken its native tongue and remembered it felt good. I know what you want to ask. Why not run? Why not wake the clerk up with an honest scream? Because I could feel how thin it all was. How I could tear it by moving too fast, and then what would spill out could not be mopped by a man in a crooked tie. I tried Mara one more time to ground myself. The call failed, and then delivered a text that read delivered 1979, which is a signal you cannot complain to customer support about. A second later, the same text landed again with a different date. 1983 this time. The radio voice, without seeing me, hummed a line about a wrong year on a man's chest. Beat 3 does not ask permission. It arrived as a knock on my doorframe from inside the room. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform stood in the bathroom mirror's reflection, not in the doorway itself, like she'd been caught by the glass first. She wore a name tag that read Gina in sharp black letters, and she looked at me like a mechanic considering a strange noise. "You're early," she said, as if we had met before. Or late, depending. Her hair smelled like a bar of soap that had learned how to flirt. "I'm not supposed to be here," I said, and hated how children spill out of my mouth at the worst times. "No one is," she answered, like it was a kindness. But every now and then a card still remembers the old board. "You followed it." She nodded at the key I'd walked with. "It will tug you on the half hour and then hard at the minute. If you're smart, you'll tug back while you still remember how." Her eyes flicked to the matchbook. "That's supposed to sit in the drawer. You don't touch it again if you want to leave as you are." I put it down because sometimes I listen to people dress for work. "How long has it been like this?" I asked, trying to stand in the doorway in 2 years at once. Gina shrugged. Since the owner wanted more rooms than the land could hold. Since the permit clock said no and the money clock said yes. They bent the ledger every night at the same minute until the number matched. The minute never unbent. She touched the frozen 2:14 on the clock, and it didn't dignify the gesture by moving. "Where are the guests?" I asked, because some questions arrive even when you know they're cruel. "Still checking in," she said, "and checking out." Some don't believe mirrors can be doors. The choice came in 2 sizes, petty and permanent. Petty was pretending nothing had happened and waiting my hour out. Permanent was trying to prove this to someone else. I thought of Mara saying get the job and not the ghost. I thought of being the kind of person who drags someone you love into a trick that hates witnesses. "Can I bring a clerk in to see this?" I asked. Gina laughed once, tired, like a person who had mopped anything you could name. "If you open that door at the minute with him beside you, the year will choose." She lifted the corner of the bedspread and peered under like that mattered. "Don't invite extra if you like how you were spelled." I glanced at the dresser photo. The facade, and it was the cursive logo's home, stonework under paint, a crooked rainbow of neon. The plaque read 214 and a woman in a coat I've only seen on my grandmother stood outside the door, looking off frame at a man with a camera. She wore a perfume you could smell through glass. The picture wasn't me, but I felt seen anyway, the way kids do when a stranger remembers a thing you never told them. When I turned back, Gina had moved to the hallway by the ghost furniture, her reflection still lagging in the bathroom mirror like a friend who didn't want to leave first. Revelation is patient. It waited until I looked for an ordinary thing. I opened a nightstand to find a Bible and instead found a guest register under the drawer false bottom. Names written for decades, each with a stay length and a checkout time. My last name appeared near the bottom, but the first name wasn't mine. It was a woman's, the one my mother almost chose before she saw my face. The checkout time beside it was 2:14, written in a hand that hooked the 4s like a fisherman. "Family," Gina said, noticing my eyes. "You wouldn't be here elsewise. Rooms keep blood like a ledger keeps tabs." The red herring about printer glitch aside, and sat down and wouldn't stand back up. Can I take something that proves this? I asked because we always want artifacts more than advice. A photo. Gina shook her head. Everything leaves the way it arrived. Paper forgets. Plastic lies. Smells remember, but smells don't scan. She looked at the keycard like a dog that bit, and then wagged. You can trade. She tapped the matchbook with one finger. Put your name in that, and it'll put you here as long as it burns. Strike a light, watch your year go. Not my recommendation. She pointed instead at the old motel photo. That one is generous. Take it and it will return, but it will bring someone back with it when it does. That's the way paper is polite. Point of no return was humble. A decision to stand in the hall at the minute or sit on the bed and let the clock lie. My phone rolled from 2:13 to 2:14 and the door swung like a hinge greased with habit. The reader blinked green with the old logo, and somewhere beyond the parking lot a radio ad promised coffee for $0.25. Choose, Gina said, voice low, not unkind. If you stay through the minute, you'll learn how to make beds in 2 years at once. If you leave, leave clean. Don't carry more than you mean to. I picked up the dresser photo and slid it behind the oil, painting over the bed like a thief who believes in insurance. Climax is a quiet thing. At the tick I did not hear, the hallway outside pressed warm like a crowded party, and the room cooled. The smell of perfume doubled, then divided, one smell older and one new. I stepped into the hall because ambition is a river I still haven't learned to ford. The outlines on the wallpaper overtook themselves, and briefly I walked between two copies of the same planter. Gina stood in both places, one in the mirror lag, one in the hall lead, and lifted her hand at me. Take the card, she said. 2 hands, 2 swipes. Give it 2 voices. It felt like a trick you'd see on a mall kiosk. I held the key card up to the reader with my right hand and to the ghost of the reader on the outline with my left, and swiped as my phone rolled back to 2:13 in a way phones do not. The beeps rang in harmony like a chord you can only hear in stairwells. The door pushed me and pulled me and then lost interest. Behind me, the Chevy's engine turned over 5 decades away. In front of me, the soda machine coughed cans that never rolled. My feet decided to choose the newer carpet. Immediate consequence. The clock in my room shuddered and changed to 2:15 for a single bright second. I wanted a big noise to announce victory. I got a small one. A heavy step on the stair outside, the unmistakable weight of someone who does not hurry because they have been late before. The room warmed. The radio faded to normal lobby indifference. The reader beeped like a bored cashier. I looked at Gina, and the hallway had only one of her now, the reflection version dissolving like a shrug. She smiled the way good workers smile when you do your own dishes. You'll be fine if you don't get greedy, she said, and wiped the ghost phone stand with a rag as if it could be clean. Someone will ask for the photo later. Don't be clever when they do. The delayed echo arrived in my pocket with bright sincerity. A text from Mara with a photo of an old motel postcard she swore she'd found in a thrift shop in near our apartment. The same cursive logo curling like a snake charmer. The same stone facade. The same plaque number, 214. She had bought it for me because the coincidence felt cute. Bringing this home to tease you, she wrote. Tell me I'm wrong and it's not your exact room. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say it was a trick of light. I sent her a thumbs up because my heart wasn't ready to be useful, and sometimes cowardice saves you. Fallout is paperwork and light. I slept 3 hours that felt like 2. The interview went the way you want when you stick to verbs. On my way out, I asked the clerk when the motel switched logos. Receipts say 1983, he said, then tilted his head, listening to a lobby radio that wasn't on. Or a little earlier, he added, for reasons he couldn't have named. I held the dresser photo behind the painting a second longer and then slid it fully out. It was blank. The image had lifted, as if it had kept its promise and gone where it was asked. The frame felt heavier by a fraction, and if weight is a story, this one had gained a paragraph. I drove home imagining Mara holding the postcard with 2 fingertips because she hates dust. The perfume hit me in the car when I downshifted to make a light. A whisper of roses and talc like a woman crossing a lobby without touching a thing. When I stepped into our apartment, the smell folded itself away like a napkin and Mara grinned, waving the postcard at me. On the back, a woman had written in blue ballpoint, "We'll be late, but won't matter." Her signature hooked the fours exactly like the ledger had, a tiny flourish that made my stomach vote against walking into our kitchen. I did anyway. That night at 2:14, my phone did not ring and our clock did not stutter, but the apartment's radio, which we never use, caught static like a net and tugged at me gently. I turned the dial and an old voice sang about a road that ends and begins in the same town. From the hall, I smelled a breath of perfume and dust, polite as a neighbor leaning in to borrow salt. The postcard on our shelf faced inward like a shy child. On the dresser, my keycard from the motel flashed its modern logo, and then the cursive one, and then nothing at all, as if deciding who to be takes energy. If you stay at that motel, use your card like a spoon. Stir once and walk away. If your door beeps on its own, make yourself boring for exactly 1 minute. Smells are how the past remembers for us. So take a clean breath and promise yourself you will not chase a lyric into the hallway. And if someone knocks from the wrong year, asking you to trade, ask them what the matchbook says and how long their name will burn. If they give a good answer, ask a better question. If they don't, close the door and put your weight against it like a person who still believes in hinges. That photo I took out of the motel room hasn't shown itself again. Weeks later, a woman knocked on our door with a tote bag of thrift shop finds, sheepish smile, and the kind of roses perfume nobody wears on purpose. "We must have mixed up at the register," she said, though we hadn't. In her hand lay the dresser photo I'd lost, the one that had gone to meet its year. "This belongs to you, doesn't it?" she asked. The plaque in the image read 214, and the woman in the photo looked off frame at the man with the camera, and for a second I smelled a lobby I didn't want to work in. I didn't take it. I said no, but thank you, and watched the tote bag breathe, once like a person who had walked uphill. The woman smiled in a tired, eternal way. "Then maybe it belongs to the room," she said, and left the frame leaning against our door, even though I didn't want it, which is how rooms keep their promises when they need to, isn't it? That night our hallway clock stuck at 2:14 for a single heartbeat and went on. In the radio, a laugh track from an old sitcom threaded itself through a weather report that had no patience. I put the key card in a drawer with our warranties in our pasts. Sometimes late, the drawer clicks softly like a reader greeting a swipe, a low little beep that reminds me to count to 60 and keep my promises. If you hear it where you are, count with me, and don't look for perfume where the dust has learned manners. And that's all for tonight's Motel Nightmares. Strange how the most ordinary places, a lobby mirror, an ice machine, a key card, can turn into traps for time, memory, and people who only wanted sleep. Maybe the real horror isn't the ghosts we expect, but the routines that keep repeating long after they should have ended. Thank you for staying with me through these 5 stories. If one of them followed you into the dark, tell me which one in the comments. I always want to know what lingers with you. And remember, the next time you're on the road and see a flickering vacancy sign, ask yourself, who's really waiting behind that door? Sleep lightly if you can. I'll see you next time if you make it back.